A very good morning and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Siyabonga ukukhethe ukuvuka nathi namhla ekuseni ngolesine tilishumi nesithupha kuyo inyanga yeNkwekweti. Londivusela ngilungelele makakula simakhulu nje ukuthi umdala siphephisile sifikile sabona savuka salibona langa lalamuhla. Very good morning and welcome to the program. Mnguni vuka kanjani namhla ekuseni?
Azivuka nje ngetibusiso mfombeni nalomhla ekuseni ngiyahamba lamgwaqweni ngibuka abantu bayagijima bayajoga kuyangithokozisa lokho kubona nje abantu ba appreciate impilo yabo babenda nesiciniseko ukuthi le mpilo leyo bayinakekela ngoba akusiko lula lokuvuka la ekuseni kodwa nakunemuntu ongafolo savela semgwaqweni lokhu ngithokozisa kakhulu ukuthi bomama cishe nje sengiyanaka onke lamalanga cishe ngathi bosisi bomake young women and young girls. It's quite interesting indeed to see what people are doing for their lives.
I think bambathathela etulu impilo yabo simo sempilo ezibaka health bahlale ba advise ukuthi asivocavoce ukuthi sitawuhlala siphilile emtimbeni. Siselapho nje sakhuluma nje ngatotete empilo today on the program sibe sinabo baka Minister of Health batabeke bakubhala ilanga le-International Midwives Day lilanga ke leli on the 5th of May ke phaka live leSwatini likhethe ukuthi leligubhe lomuhla sicubula nje salonyaka sithi midwives a vital climate solutions tabe sina sanele gwebo longuneskhona itiko kuba nje ukuthi how does health epidemics impact the health and well-being of pregnant women and newborns in the communities lama nurses lawa sevako specifically ukuthi are there any challenges specific challenges noma ke ma barriers ema midwives labhekana nabo in promoting sustainable maternity care in health epidemics and how can these be addressed? And also how can midwives engage with their communities to raise awareness about intersection of climate change and maternal health?
Ya kanti-ke sitawube sesichumana ne-Excellency Desislava Shumelova ungumbasada we-European Union lapha eveni Eswatini. Sifuna nje ukukhulumisa tindzaba leti nengana as we have the honor of having her on the show today. We want to discuss the significance of yona-ke Europe Day emnyaka wa 2024 which marks 74 years of unity, peace and prosperity in Europe. Our conversation wants to focus on the EU's extensive work lapha ekhaya Eswatini. Sifuna nje kubuka onke ma projects laba wendako as well as the other initiatives that they have made over the past 5 decades. That is 50 years in Eswatini. We'll explore how the EU has supported Eswatini in crucial areas such as access to clean water. Siyathi ukuthi indzaba yemanti indzaba lehanjiswa embili ekuthenini akafinyelele nale emaphandleni emakhaya indzaba yagesi siwabonile bo rural electrification programs. Siyafuna ke kuva ukuthi njengoba EU nanayo adlala lichaza elikhulu ekuthenini emanti nagesi kanye ke nemfundo isabalele nje cishe lonke live leMaswati wonke umuntu abe nako as basic human rights. We want to delve into the key goals of the EU's multi-annual indicative program, which is another program labahlanyela ngayo imali etinhlelweni letahlukene ukuthuthukisa live lakangwane ikakhulu kubantu labasha nekuthuthukisa tona tindzaba temakhono. Kanti-ke additionally siyafuna nje kuva kuye Her Excellency Ambassador Shumelova in providing her insights into the EU's involvement in the renewable energy. Sibonile bo energy indaba esukwini la itolo indzaba yokuthi sikhicitele gas wethu lapha ekhaya nendzaba yokuthi ke sibuke nje ema solar panels, the renewable energy space netindzaba tekulima, the agricultural projects laba involved kuwo. Sifuna kuva iresponse yabo kuleto tinhlangothi leto. Kanti-ke looking ahead sesibukile nje letinhlelo sevele tenteka sifuna ukudiscussa the new Samoa agreement and the EU's future objectives for its partnership with Live Lakangwane. Ngolumo ke lesitawuba nayo naye Her Excellency Desislava Shumelova makabanxa insimbi esikhombisa lomuhla hlala nathi esikhatsenyalo sibuke tihloko lethamba embili emaphephandzabeni.
Alright, siqala sibuka i-Times of Eswatini leti ihamba imbili lomuhla kulahamba imbili imbonzela petition delivery Cops protesters clash. Commotion at bus rank as cops foil march to Tinkundla Ministries. Homeless farm dweller, others allegedly assaulted with batons, and a woman was rushed to hospital. Kuletinyele Thamba Embili Shembe leader returns to Eswatini. Kulanyele Hamba Embili retired senior cop Kusile passes on, and EPTC charges manager Ngobile with 5 counts.
Kutemidlalo, in an unexpected move, Green Mamba withdraw from CAF. No Eswatini team will participate in the 2024-2025 Confederation Cup as Ingwenyama Cup champs pull out. It is indeed an unexpected move. Green Mamba, who are the current Ingwenyama Cup champions, who have withdrawn from the CAF Confederation Cup. Kanti kulenye indzaba Bulls Pupu on Seabirds Raider. Ngathi ke iSeabirds nanayo sayimbuke ngalabovu banele Pupu sikhonze. Inkunzi emnyama on the verge of losing their star midfielder in Banele Pupu sikhonze. Kulenye indzaba Chelsea climbed to number 6 as Chelsea beat Brighton 2-1 esukenda itolo. Kulenye indzaba trio nominated for Rasa. A big stage awaits 3 local sports personalities as the African Sports Council Union Region 5 awards nominees have been revealed.
Right, moving on to the Eswatini Observer. Kulethamba imbili lomuhla Indlovukazi Her Majesty the Indlovukazi being welcomed by Emma Kosigati upon her arrival at KM3 International Airport yesterday. She was from her state visits in Singapore, Indonesia and Mozambique. Kanti kuletinye letihamba imbili, firefighters deliver 11 demands to government. They want retired officer relieved of duties. Firefighters claim they are owed overtime dating back to 2021, and they also claim 90% current recruits are not physically fit. Kuletinye lethamba imbili, MPs want master 900 stringent measures effected. And kuletinye lethamba imbili, 86 million amalangeni for unused drugs despite shortage.
Nsingizini or Leopard for Confederation Cup slot, PLE clubs CAF sport conundrum. It is not clear which team will take part in Confederation Cup. Kanzige Nsingizini Hotspurs ne Leopard can qualify. PLE is to look into matter once the league ends. Nothing motivates players like being on TV. That is according to Coolcat, who is Eswatini's football legend and sports presenter. He's well known by the name Coolcat Kanzil Kamalakeng William Shongwe. He is seen on that photo with sports media broadcasting expert Namhla Mtandabuzo. Relegation quagmire at Somhlolo is a story that speaks to the MTN Premier League playing its last games of the season. Lapo Kona, there will be an exciting double header Kona at Somhlolo National Stadium on Sunday.
Letamba imbili Eswatini Daily News. Drugs shortage crisis. Ministry of Health underutilized 86 million emalangeni. Kuletinye letamba imbili, 2024 EITF goes digital as applications now open via innovative app, and the EU ambassador pays courtesy visit to Foreign Affairs Minister.
Eswatini Daily News, the leading story, CAF Confederation Cup slot chance for Nsingizini and Royal Leopard as Ingwenyama Cup champions Green Mamba have officially ruled themselves out of CAF Interclub competition, allowing an opening for either Momo Cup champions Nsingizini Hotspurs or Royal Leopard to take the Confederation Cup slot, as Buffaloes are still banned from CAF competitions. Hub Derby relegation decider will be on Sunday. Hansge negotiations could keep Tiger Woods from Ryder Cup.
6:10 CD pesa lapho lethamba imbili kumaphephandaba saselkhefu sibene tindzaba teswati.
I'm a very happy customer.
I know. Ngikimbele.
Imali ebhizinisi ayidliwa wayidla udabula phansi.
Hayi ngimsebenzi yethu lesendako la ekhaya njengoba niyibona limihle kangaka.
Ngiyakolosha, which is crocheting.
Ngiyakhicita ke noko kakhulu emsebenzini wethu ikhumba.
Ngenda kodaba
emaqigi nokweqaba entsangeni.
ngilungisa emagedlela
Hello, how are you? We are selling peanuts at 5. Thank you so much. Umdalak busi. On the strat, baby.
Siphinde sinamukele ehlelweni Maswati lamahle sethabele nathi indzaba tesiswati. Indlovukazi Mhlekazi seyibuyile ekhaya ngemuva kwelihambo lwayo. Kanti-ke indlovu yemhlaba lebekade ilibhekise eveni leSingapore, eIndonesia kanye neMozambique.
Indlovukazi Mhlekazi ifikele esikhumulweni setindiza iKing Mswati the Third International Airport, lapho khona sive seMaswati siphume ngetinkani kwemukela indlovu yemhlaba. Indlovukazi Mhlekazi beyikade ilibhekise eveni leSingapore, eveni le-Indonesia kanye naseveni labomakhelwane iMozambique. Live leSwatini linebudlelwane lesekuneminyaka leminingi kakhulu solo baba khona nalamave lawa. Lobudlelwane buqinisekise kundlondlobala, kuthengiselana, ukuvakasha kunye nasenhlangothini lokutshala imali kubala lokumbalwa. Kulolu hambo indlovu yemhlaba beyikade iyawuqinisa ubuhlobo emkhathini kwelive leSwatini kuye nalamave, inze futhi iyawuchwanzela sive seMaswati. Lebe bakhona kutawukwemukela indlovu yemhlaba esikhumulweni setindiza bekubomake emakhosikazi, sigodlo, mvunankulu welive, libandla letindvuna tembuso kanye naboba betikhulu. Etindzabeni bikapholile Maziya esikhumulweni setindiza iKing Mswati the Third International Airport.
Umhlonishwa Mvunankulu Russell Mmiso Dlamini sewulilele mengameli welive leNingizimu Afrika Cyril Ramaphosa, hulumende kanye nebantfu bakulela live labomakhelwane kulandzela kushona kwebantfu labangu-33 uMakdzilika Stezi eGeorge. Le Stezi sitsilike sisakhiwa kanti-ke sigcobe ti-70 leting-81 kwalimala leting-29. Mvunankulu uthi bendlulisa kulila kwabo lokukhulu emindenini nasebanganini balabahambe emhlabeni ngenxa yalesigameko. Kanti-ke uphindze wafisela labo labalimele kuphila kwengetane kwekuthi banelithemba lokuthi batawutfolakala baphila nalabanye labasengakatfolakali. Umhlonishwa Mvunankulu Russell Mmiso Dlamini uphindze walilela nelive le-India kulandzela kushona kwebantfu labangu-14 nekulimala kwalabangu-76 eMumbai. Lokhu kulandzela kudzilika kwendzawo yekumaketha pheceleti i-billboard ngalesibili. Kanti-ke Mvunankulu uthi imicabango yabo nemithandazo yabo inamengameli walela live Drupadi Murmu. Uhulumende kanye-ke nesive sakulela live kulesikhathi lesimatima. Ndvunankhulu uthi bathandazela kwelulama kwalabalimele futhi-ke bethemba ukuthi uNkulunkulu utawubathuthuta bonke kulesikhathi lesi. Indvuna yelitiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla umhlonishwa uMvanenkosi Lonkhokhela uthi uhulumende utimisele kufaka umfutfo ekuthenini live likhone ukutikhicitela gesi lowanele ngekusebenzisa tebuchwephesha letitfutfukile. Indvuna yethi kungmanje live litawucala imisebenti letawukhona kwengeta gesi longanga 75 megawatts. Indvuna beyikhuluma ngesikhathi ematiko latsindzekako ahlangene kuphuma nemasu ekucinisekisa ukuthi gesi lohlobile lowanele ukhona lapha eVeni. Kanti-ke lo mhlangano bewubanjelwe ezulwini.
Lo mhlangano lomkhulu unesicubulo lesikhuthaza ukuthi leSwatini lithole emasu ekuthi kube nagesi lowanele. Ikhuluma kulo mhlangano indvuna yelitiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla umhlonishwa uMvanenkosi Lonkhokhela uthi uhulumende sowende imetamo lebonakalako kuthi gesi abe ngilowanele eVeni ngetinhlelo letinyetato letitawucala masinyane.
Government is taking major strides towards achieving energy security for the country.
Indvuna ithi gesi lodzingekako emhlabeni nguloyo longanyukubeti imvelo lokwende ukuthi-ke nelive likubone kubalulekile ukuthi kube yintfo lelihambisa embili kakhulu emgomeni welive bekulwa negucuka kwesimo selitulu. Indvuna ibonge leli bhange le-Standard Bank ngekuthi lesekela lo msebenzi laphinzeke lacela naletinye tinhlangothi kakhulu tetimali kuthi nato tiwusekele umsebenzi wekwakhiwa noma wekuphehlwa kwagesi. Umphathi welibhange le-Standard Bank Mvuselelo Fakudze uthi leli bhange litinikele ukuthi lesekele imisebenzi yekuphehla gesi longanyukubeti imvelo ngenhloso yokuthi live lingamesweli gesi.
As there are many solutions out there in the market, there is a big debate the world over about coal.
Fakudze uthi leli bhange lifise ukuthi masinyane sale likhombisa emaswati kakhulu emabhizinisi leliwasekele kulolu hlangothi lokutawube sekukhombisa titselo talo mhlangano.
Then shipped to Europe, and yet we still are energy deficient in this part of the world.
Umphathi wenkampani yemagesi kuleli Ernest Mkhonda uthi live lithenga gesi ngemali lenganga 2.5 billion emalangeni kanti live lona likhona kutiphehlela gesi longanga 373 megawatts. Umphathi welibandla lelengamele temandla kuleli Sikhumbuzo Thabetse uthi leSwatini likhicita gesi lohlobile futhi-ke lisebenzisa wona njengoba lomunye aphehlwa ngekusebenzisa imandi. Thabetse uphinze waveta ukuthi live selitawucala kutiphehlela gesi longu 75 megawatts etindzabeni kubika Sonto Mlangeni ezulwini.
Indvuna yelitiko letemafa umhlonishwa Neil Reichenberg ithi leSwatini uma lingagcinisa etindzabeni tekusungula imisebenti yekuphehla gesi ingasita kakhulu ukunciphisa lizinga lemaswati leleswele imisebenti ikakhulu bantfu labasha. Indvuna-ke ithi kudlisana emahloni ukuthi live leSwatini linemcebo waphansi lomnyenti kepha-ke lisebenzisa imali lenyenti kutsenga gesi ngaphandle kwelive. Indvuna beyikhuluma emhlanganweni wekubuketa tisombululo tekuphuma nelikhambi letinkinga tagesi.
Lo mhlangano longenelwe tinhlangothi letitsindzekako etindzabeni temandla wekutfola tisombululo letikhonsako tekuthi leSwatini likhone kuba nagesi lowanele.
Having natural resources to be able to produce our own power and importing power when we have a massive unemployment problem is absolute foolishness. We really need to get this right, and we need to get it right now.
Indvuna yelitiko letemafa umhlonishwa Neil Reichenberg uthi tinkampani letitimele kufanele tisukumise emasu ekwakha tinhlelo tekuphehla gesi lohlobile. Indvuna ithi lakangwane lingakhona kutiphehlela gesi lowanele cishe kuto tonkhe tinhlangothi letifaka ekhatsi lihlangothi lwetekhicita timphahla. Indvuna ithi-ke litiko letemafa lilungele kwelekelela lapho kudzingeke khona.
And if we could be a country that is 100% reliant on green energy, it means all the products we're producing here, when you produce textiles, produced in Eswatini, 100% green energy used to produce this product.
Lababukela uhlangothi lwetimali kulesifundza lesisentasi neAfrika bathi-ke tinkhomba tiveta ukuthi emabhange sekavele atilungiselele kwesekela imisebenti yekuphehla gesi longanyukubeti imvelo njengoba timakethe tikhomba ukuthi Eminyakeni lesihlanu letako, temandla titabe tilinganiselwa ku 320 billion US dollars. Tindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni ezulwini.
Indvuna yelitiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla umhlonishwa umvane Kusile Nkhokhela ithi indzaba letsinsa tinkampane letikhombise inshisekelo ekuba ingcenye emsebenti-ke noma-ke ekuchuba umsebenti wekwakha ingungu ya-oyili ephuza umoya isakhulunyiswa tindvuna tembuso i-cabinet. Indvuna ivumile-ke ukuthi tikhona tinkampane tekuhamba letinebuchwephesha nelikhono lalo msebenzi, kepha ishito ukuthi tikhona letinye tinkampane nakhona. Kanti-ke indvuna beyikhuluma ngesikhatsi emalunga ephalamende endlu yesikhulu acela kuchazela indvuna mayelana netinsolo tekwekuthi kunetinkampane lesetikhulunyiswa ngalo msebenzi, kepha letingalandzeli umtsetfo.
Nayihleti indlu yabayesikhulu emalunga ephalamende acele ukuthi indvuna yelitiko letemcebo waphansi nemandla umhlonishwa umvane Kusile Nkhokhela amane acacise indzaba mayelana nebantfu labayekeliswe kuchubeka kusebenta ebandleni lebacondzisi ngephansi kwalo lelitiko. Emalunga ephalamende yaphindze acela indvuna ukuthi icacise indzaba ya 8 billion emalangeni kanye na 2 billion emalangeni lophathelene nemsebenti wekwakhiwa kwe-National Petroleum Company.
Laba lesebabachamukisa emhlubulweni bangangeni kule expression of interest. Bathini basibona banelungelo lokuphula imithetho yalelive. That is my question. Kuthi bangena njani bangazange ba-express interest ngaNovember kuma-tenders?
In the absence of the board, ngibani lothatha tinqumo lekufuna ngabe tithathwa nge-board. Ngabe ngiyaphosisa yini ukuthi leto tinqumo leto setihleli emandleni akhe minister wale yaparastatal.
Kubuta nje kuminister nakathi kude lokonakele. Kepha at the same time uphindze uthi kusho yena uthi le board beyinikwe 3 months. Lo 34 months unguye in lo 3 months, I mean lo 3 years. Lo 34 months.
Indvuna umhlonishwa umvane Kusile Nkhokhela ubese uyatiphendvula letindzaba totimbili.
Iqiniso lithi kude lokonakala lengicina ngakho lengamela. Nangabe khona lokonakala sesingakucela ukukufa ukuthi ngabe yini mhlambe nasibone, kepha ke lapha kwalandzelwa umthetho njengoba ubhaliwe waka Public Enterprise Unit. E-Asia sinebahlobo bethu lekubonakala ukuthi bangani belive nabangani belive bavele bane experience lebonakala ukuthi inkulu kumanangu kuma oil reserves. Nayi inkulu keke yabonakala khona lapho nale concept yokuqala nje kwekuthi uyathi siyayidzinga lensaba ye reserve. Liqiniso ukuthi laba baka bekuhamba lekukhulunywa ngabo lapha baba bantu lebefika nabo mana ngathi uthi kwabe sekuhamba njani. I'll have to inquire about that, but baba bantu abefika vele khona lekuqaleni akusibo bodwana futhi lebefika babonakala ukuthi ungathi abaconsidwa kahle.
Indvuna igcizelele kakhulu ukuthi indzaba lephathelene ne-National Petroleum Company sinqumo sisengakathathwa. Tindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni nasikhumbuzo Dlamini nasimuva Shongwe ephalamende.
Umnakabo Mufi kanye natsatse wakubo Mufi basolwa abantwana bemufi ngekuthi babacosha ekhaya ngesizathu sokuthi bathi babe walabantwana longasekho emhlabeni wadla lifa. Anzike lelifa lokuthiwa uMufi walidla ngilelo lebatali bakhe kanye nabomnakabo banalo tsatse wabo.
Lelifa lelibanga ngongilelo la Walter kanye na Elizabeth Nxumalo nabo labangasekho emhlabeni kubanga likhaya lelikhulu lelisemhobondleni Hlanhla Nxumalo kanye na Ncamisile Nxumalo basolwa ngekungafuni kuphume ekhaya lelikhulu bashiye lebantwana bemnakabo longasekho emhlabeni.
Because uthi housing angeke mina ngi-entertain lokunye ningasothi main home. Inkinga lenkulu lana commission it's main home. Abaphumele baleni ukuthi main home wendeka kanjani. Unayo andi yakhe, unayo babe lomncane, kuphi kwababe igama lesilatiko thini from both of them kuthiwa thini asiphume ekhaya babe wadlalifa nawo lesikwatiko ngababwethu
Baswadlalifa.
waswadlalifa
Lelingaphathelani nalomhlaba.
lengaphathelana nalomhlaba nasi lekungasifaki besingekho sesihlezi sibuta ukuthi nakusho sibabe wadlalifa beba kuphi labanye makwabo bekakhona elders of the family they were there sine sendeni nakusho sibabe wadlalifa if babe adlalifa everything that says Nxumalo it belongs to my father
ubhadelwe imali and a new plot ulot 417 kuzone 1 eMhobodleni okungiyo le plot athi ke ngabe sengiyayithengisa bekungasiye ukuthi ayithengise bekuyi competition yakhe ukuthi sesikhokhe kulawa maknathi sesibhidlidilela nayi imali hamba uyokwakha kulo 417 nganangu 79000 lesikunika wona uyobuyisela ama structures nalama structures baya describe ukuthi bekungazwa ama structures la ngathi mhlambe aphilila njani most of them vele bengathi lamanye half done lamanye ngathi asebhidlikile but still they compensate you because khona lokusuku ukwakhile
ukhomishana labaphinyati insulote kungaphatheki kahle kwemafi ofisini la kaMaster baveta imivo yabo kulendzaba.
You cannot be allocated two. That's why when sozama kuba lesithunga ligaba lemfati wakho akusilo liqiniso
cha leyo be ilakhaya ayishayo
ukuthi lo mthetho lokukhuluma ngawo zonlinda uthi akusiyo yini umgomo wale project ukuthi uallocate iplot ibe yinye ngeligama lakho lesithu wena bosuzama kuyithola bosuzama kuyifana ngeligama lemkakho ngikuthi sozama kuyifihla ngoba uyati ukuthi umgomo uthi uthola yinye iplot thatha le wayithengisa sofuna ngeligama lemkakho
kodwa bese national housing ukuthi lendzawo lomhlaba utaba walaba ngeke yini kuyisolwe lo wasikhalo sakho ukuthi wena uthi wafaka lapha wakha ngedidini na uyabona lokho into ibelula lo mhlaba sekukubo ukuthi bavumelane ukuthi wena uyathola icompensation yakho
so wena wawubhadalelwa ama structures lobe uwakhile lapha ekhaya baphinde bakunika ke neplot uma ngabe bebakunika le plot bebakunikelani nangabe bathi qhubeka uhlale la khaya
Nokuthi ungabisabuyela lekhaya khona labantu abadothola something ungete kwalunga lokho usangathi ilunga lakho licala ukuligcine kulekhaya kodwa usawuna ngoba sawunako lokunye lokuseceleni yabona ngilapho lasikhulumela khona
Kusile uthi yena akanankinga nekuphuma ekhaya kodwa akacondzisisi kahle ukuthi kungani umnaka bonhlanhla bese wenta kungathi lelikhaya lelikhulu lakhe Nhlanhla naye uyatiphendulela
umbuto enhlanhla mawuthi titracha tonke lekhaya dakho housing uthi mawuvusa indlu seyakho lendlu noma lendlu mayivusa solo yalomnikati manje sacela ukubuta 2 indlu yamake uyivusile wena noma uyibulele
akusikwemndeni akusi ema properties one room icrash bengisustain impilo kuyo nale mali ngithengisa kuyo ngiyowakha lelikhaya kude ukuthi ngiyothenga lokunye ngivusa ngale mali ngithenge ngayo ngivusa lelikhaya kaNdwandwe ngale mali yami ngalamandla ami hayi ngemali kaNdwandwe akusiko kwemndeni lo kwalendlu leya lo 417 akusiko kwakubo laba akusiko bomnaka kwami
sekwesibili lendzaba yakanxumalo ivele embi kwekhomishana lephinyati insulote kungaphatheki kahle kwemafi ofisini la kaMaster kulokhu kwekucala beyangekho Ncamsini kanye naNhlanhla etindzabeni kubika Fortune Dlangamandla ngisembabane.
Kutemidlalo umphathi wemsakato wetitfombe Eswatini Television Authority Mlamuli Dlamini uthi kusifiso salomsakato kuthi usasakata tinhlelo talapha eSwatini umdlalo webhola wakuleli nanawo ungasaleli emuva. Dlamini uthi bafuna kuphinze kube nendlela yekumaketha lomsakato ngekulethela sive imichuthelwano yebhola yakuleli. Azike Dlamini abekhuluma ngesikhathi kubanjwe umhlangano sikolo welilanga linye walomsakato nelibandla lelichamuka eveni leNingizimu Afrika. Leliholwa ke nguloyo lowake wadlalela licembu leManzini Wanderers kanye neKaizer Chiefs lophinze asebentele umsakato weSuperSport William Coolcat.
Umsakato wetitfombe Eswatini TV bobamba umhlangano sikolo welilanga linye lapho khona libandla letemidlalo lisakata imidlalo kulomsakato belihlangane nelibandla liqhamuka eveni laseNingizimu Afrika lokunguliem Kulukhethi Shongwe lokwadlalela ikhethelo lesivela kuleli kanye nelicembu leManzini Wanderers kuleli wadlalela nelicembu leKaizer Chiefs kubomakhelwane eNingizimu Afrika lokungunyalo usebentela umsakato SuperSport lonelwati lolwanele ngetekusakata temidlalo kanye nanamhla mtandabuza lobukete kumaketha kubuka indlela lomsakato longatama kusakata ibhola ngayo aphindza akhicite tinhlelo tetemidlalo kulomsakato. Avula lomhlangano umphathi weSwatini TV Mlamuli Dlamini uchazile ukuthi lunyawo loluthetfwe kulomsakato luconze kusita tisebenti tetemidlalo kulomsakato kuphindze kube indlela ikwakha tinhlelo yakhe lesive lesibukela wona lomsakato.
Hence sicele nina Mr. Shongo sicele wenina Miss Namhla ukuthi nite sitohlala phasi and just say okay Eswatini TV nithi nifuna noma sithi sifuna kungena ku-broadcaster ibhola yini lesikhuluma ngayo. What are we talking about? Just start at the basic level. Yini lesikhuluma ngayo? What does broadcasting soccer or football mean at its basic level, right? And then sikhulumise ukuthi okay, what is it going to take? Kufunekalani yini lamali letinto lekufuna tenteke kuze lifezeke leliphupho lethu. And then also bese sikhulumisa nokuthi how can we monetize, singayakha njani, singayenda njani le bhola ukuthi isakhele imali.
William Kulukhethi Shongwe nelibandla lakhe bachazile ukuthi leliphupho lalomsakato lihle futhi litawuphumelela.
Ngicabanga ukuthi lo mhlangano lona nje wokuqala, the first of its kind I think in the industry nasenkampanini lena yeSwazi TV ukuthi bawuhlanganise. Sibongele ke nemphathi uCEO uMr Mlamuli Dlamini ukuthi lento imhlukubeti, and obviously we're talking about the platform lenye la lesihlangene ngayo. Eventually, who knows, maybe Swazi TV ne football and Swazi will end up into other bigger channels in the continent. And what does that say? Players will be better marketed. Players will get opportunity to be seen by the world.
The growth of the league translates to the growth of the channel, and the growth of the channel translates to the growth of the league. So in you broadcasting the league means that there's better opportunities for players.
Lo mhlangano welilanga linye bokungenelwe likomiti lelihola lomsakato executive committee, libandla libukete kumaketha i-marketing committee, libandla letinsatheli tetemidlalo kulo msakato. Lobihela umsakato eSwatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini kanti umpiki uhlanganiswa nguFabrice Msonera eMbabane.
Sitaphetha njalo indzaba tesiswati sibahlola timakethe sitawubuya sichubeke nehlelo.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sembe ukukhicita lokusembili.
Renewal of TV licenses for 2024 is now open. Here is a quick reminder. A viewer's TV license costs 180 emalangeni per device. Other accessories such as decoders and set-top box cost 50 emalangeni per device. For traders and repairers, TV license costs 300 emalangeni per business area. And now, to pay your TV license, use these following methods. You can use MTN Mobile Money with the number 76222000 or dial *007 *3 *7#, or you can use Eswatini Imali. And you can pay our TV license at any post office in the country. Another option is you can use any NetBank branch using our TV license account number 1199004337. Don't forget, when paying for your viewer's TV license, reference with your PIN at all times. And when paying for a retailer TV license, reference with your TIN at all times. For more information, call us on 7802-4543 or 34050163 or 34020879. And you can send us a WhatsApp message on 762222000.
Welcome back. Sakuvusela nalo sanza kusivulela sibuka kabanti tindzaba tabo midwives njengoba tokumela ukuthi mhla ka 5 May umhlaba wonke kuba lilanga labo International Midwives Day. Likho letempilo ke litabe li celebrate lelanga lamuhla ngaphansi kwesicubulo lesithi Midwives a Vital Climate Solution. Sesivele sina sanele egwebu losuka khona itiko letempilo with a nurse asifuna kuvuka ukuthi how does health epidemics impact the health and well-being of pregnant women and newborns in the communities nurses serve. Matopics ke laba latabe abukiwe lomuhla nje kulomsebenzi lapho batabe bagubha lolu suku. Sifuna ukuvakela ukuthi are there any specific challenges or barriers midwives face in promoting sustainable maternity care in health epidemics and how can these be addressed? Asivuzele kwebesaba ukuthi benathi lomhla ekseni langa lelikhulu lenu bonus particularly bo midwives. Kuma nje singakangeni kule celebration lamuhla kuva nje lesicubulo ukuthi ngabe sisho ukuthini nikhethe kanjani ukuthi nithi imbandzakanye ne climate change.
Ngiyabonga. Angivusela maswatini lamahle. Njengoba sangithulile ibhetala ngisenele ngagwebo. Ngisebenzela imbabane government esibhedlela. Babelekisi lonyaka banesitubulo sabo lesinjoba sisho si midwives a vital climate solution. Lokusho ukuthi ke ngalamafisha baluleke kakhulu basombululo lesikhulu kule shintsha kwesimo selitulu. Sitawukhumbula lokho ukuthi isimo selitulu sinemthelela lomkhulu etimpilweni tethu. Nawunganaka kahle nje lokho ukuthi namuhla kuyashisa kusasa kuyabanza sekunetikhukhula leto vele kuyayibeka engqupheni impilo yethu esemaswati ikakhulu kubomake nebantwana ngoba labo ngasho ngithi ngibo bantu laba vulnerable bantu labalula ukuthi bathole kugula abantu labalula ukuthi basheshe balimale empilweni yabo. Isuka lapho ke lesicubulo ukuthi manje babelekisi bangakhona lokusombulula letindzaba le climate change. Ngaloko sibona kwekuqala nje babelekisi umsebenzi wabo futhi lomunye ngilokuya lemangweni ba lengathi ngababo i-community diagnosis bafike babone letinge leti lemangweni lokuthi tibanga tiqhamukaphi tibangwa yini. Tawukhumbula ukuthi kuquqa isimo selitulu kubangwa ngise ngasesikhathi. So nawufundzisa lemangweni lokuthi manje why lokhu nalokhu ngakwendi ngidawubekisa nje ke kadzeni vele bese banemgozi yetibi sishise tibi lokulimata le lidwadwasi lemhlaba nalo. So bese bafundziswa ke lemangweni ukuthi manje ke tibi ifuna into ilahle kanje lethi into ilahleka lethi into ilahle kanjena. So iqhamuka lapho ke lesicubulo salonyaka.
Okay.
Lokuthi banemthelela lomkhulu kule impilo. Naloko ukuthi ke na unganaka kahle ngaloko sibomake nebantwana ba vulnerable. Kulula lokufundisa bona siyathi ngeSiswati sithi igotsha semandi. Nawufundisa lo make wemntwana ufundisa nomntwana lento uyiqala phansi asesemncane athi ukuthi okay lokhu indifuna ngitende nginadi ukuze impilo yami ibe ngilephephile.
Njengoba uveta nje ukuthi vele umsebenzi omkhulu na kuma communities niyadlala inzima na 7 lonke nje niyadlala inzima kuva nje ama experiences enu as bonus noma ke babelekisi particularly for a male nurse lokuthi vele ngabe kuba kanjani because vele sijele ukuthi bonus kubabo bamfla babo make namabosisi but nje sifuna ukuva ama experiences akho as a male nurse as mhlawumbe usacuba umsebenzi wakho lokuba ngumbelekisi.
Iqiniso lesitolo vele onesi bekuba abantu besifazane kepha ngokushintsha kwetikhathi nyalo sekunaba labadruna Lenge ngakuva nje ke kulabaningi bathi ke labo make kakhulu bathi baye bajabule nabakhanzala nabasoboyeleka kakhulu bakhanze umbelekisi lo ngibabe noma lo mthuni ngoba baye basuke baphathana kahle angadi ke kanjani kepha nje basiphathana kahle but ke sisasebenza kwananathi kude loku ngalokuthi into siyifunza kuvele beat ama females nama males sifunza into yinye and senda into yinye kude lo mehluko simanje ke mina ngenda lokuhlukile nalolu munye senda into yinye nje cishe sonke sekunje ke kuyeba ama preferences ebantu asimanje mina ngithanza lo mina ngithanza lona so lokho angeke ukucontrol ungumuntu ke ngalosi mina decide mina simanje hayi mina ngifuna wesifazane mina ngifuna wesilisa.
So ma challenges mhlambe lenibhekana nawo kuba yini because yonke imisebenzi kuba khona nje mhlambe leyo setback le lo ibonako nokuthi njengabe nibese ni overcome kanjani nje nisenda umsebenzweni wakubelekisa.
Okay, I challenge nje lenkulu kakhulu nje ngilo ukuthi bantu bathi ukuthi sowuthethwele noma adiscover sowuthethwele ahlale phansi ekhaya angayi lokele esibhedlela uyohlola lokho bese kwenta lokuthi lo muntu labanye ukhanza ukuthi nase kulilanga lakhe lekubeleka uthi asekagijima sesingathi ukuthi lona unani nani kugula kwakhe lanako 1 2 lo muntu loyo uta naketa lesibhedlela sekulate ukhanza ukuthi tifo letinye aka discover emtimbeni noma ke akakhona inakeleleka kahle asesethethwele now thethwele uyathi ukuthi kufuna uneme amaphilisi ufuna wanathe kufuna kukalo isisu utest inqumbi yetinto stokhona ukubona si lokugula lonako noma lokukhanzakala kwemtimbeni wakho akwehleli akwengqeleni kumntwana 2 nalokuthi le miso thathako ilekelela wena umtimba wakho ukuthi ukhulise lo mntwana asesesiswini so ukhaza labanye vele lamathala sabaphuma sebaneti deformities tside noma ke labanye baphuma bangafika isikhathi ngalosi ukhaza izibane isifo tside but asikabonakali ngalosi uphutile kufika so lokho ke siyaqhubeka siyazama lokuthi sifundzise lokuthi ngaleli langa nje udiscover lokuthi udethwele uvele uphuthume esibhedlela eclinic ngile clinic noma ngile mtholampilo labatafike basho khona ukuthi okay ngoba wena ukulesigaba lesi utawuthathana kunanako wente nako nanako utase ubuya nini bayakunika bona nama dates ukuthi ubuya nini ngalo sibona bafundisekile manje ke nakalana ema risk akhona nginanga nakalana ama risk akhona nginanga so kwendeka kanjalo so siyazama lokuqhubeka kufundisa ukuthi manje ke once wathola nje ukuthi udethwele vele uphuthume esibhedlela so kuyendeka ke labanye vele ukhansi baqhubeka bahlale siyesizame nakhona lokuthi letinto imaternity yethu seyaba that inale comprehensive care ngokuthi nangabe umuntu afika esibhedlela angatest lokho siyakhona lokuthi simteste letinto letifo letingaba ingodi emntwaneni ndabikisa nje bo HIV bo syphilis sibakhona sibatest khona la maternity into engawutende ngale ukutesta nemchamo into engawutende ngale so sesiyakhona sikhona ukuthi test letinto nakafika lana nje ngaleli ngafika ngale sibhedlela because esikhathini lo munye utawufika asimanje hayi ngiqala kumhelo ekseni asinafika la liphi icard lakho kude licard so siyakhona ukuthi simendele onke nama test sibone ukuthi yini into ofuna sigatse ngoba ngito epheze sibangele inkinga ngale ngesheya nasekabelekile ukhanza ukuthi umntwana sone sifo tside libena bese silapheke ngalana noma bese banjwe ngalana wasuyavikeleka lo mntwana
siselapho nje kubuka mhlambe ama challenges noma ke inkinga lesoloti khona ufuna singene ku endzabeni yabo maternal deaths dakumla ukuthi vele litiko nahulumende solo nje usebentanga lokukhulu ukudimisela kuzama kunciphisa leti nombolo ingabe nje vele nasibuka lelizinga lekushona kwabo make noma ke kushona kwabo bamfana nabasabeleka lime kanjani
kulelizinga lelo lisekhona lona ngalo kunale challenges abantu baabethe esibhedlela so ukhanza ukuthi asakhoni kugwenta kahle usakhanya so ukhanza lokuthi njenganyalo nje lama maternal deaths asekhona currently they are standing at 452 per 1000 population persons bese nama neonatal deaths ke wona ke they are 20 per 1,000. Lokusho ukuthi yes kona siyazama ngipheza inombolo sekuthi ukhanza ukuthi sive asisibambisi ngoba ngemthetho umuntu lotethwele akaguli ungulophile saka so akamele ke sigadze noma sithole kuthi siyalimala noma siyasishiya loyo mntana noma loyo maki ngalokuthi ungulophilile vele.
So ingabe nakhona i-mother to child transmission nakhona ngilenye indzaba hulumende la isukumele itulu lokuthi lokuhambisa nje lwati kufundisa abomake ukuthi babavikele abamfa babo ngabe isayibona invele inombolo letiphakeme ukuthi make athelele umfana HIV mhlambe asabeleka.
Njengoba nje ngiyaleta bese titangala labanye bomake nje ke ukhanza ukuthi athi manje no mina ngiyasathi isimo sami but ukhanza semaphilisi akawathathi so discover sinyalo so utethwele so uhulumende kwabeka umthetho manje ke wonke makalo tethwele kufana nasema abe treatment kutonqiphisa le transmission le yangala emntwaneni because singabe umntwana engotini ngaye usuwena awufuni naba awufuni nakukahle azivikele nangelotako so uhulumende abe umthetho manje cha wonke makalo tethwele vele akathatha itolo bokhanza ukuthi bebala saphisa isikhathi sethwele abeleke asasabeleke pheza kuqhubeke pheze wayike amaphilisi but nyalo was no now i-treatment yakho say lifelong once wayiqala ngalana uqhubeka nayo toti.
Yeah. Right. So kuzama nje mhlambe ukunciphisa dona nje leti inkinga leti nasibona nje tindzaba tabo family planning ngalokho nakhona vele nato teto tindzaba letimcoka lenti khulumisako lenibakhulumisaka bomake ngato ingabe kuyaye kwendeke kanjani acetha kubeleka nje make uthi nomthetho ukuthi uyakhona ukuthi vele nimfake mhlambe ngiyabekisela implants noma mhlambe nimjove immediately after giving birth ubani isikhathi esinganani nje after giving birth ukuthi mhlambe angaqala ke bese so uyadihlela ke ukuthi ufuna ukuthatha amapha ama contraceptives.
Okay. Makalo tethwele okay singafike kutethwaleni nje ke leti ndzaba tekuhlela kuyafundiswa ngato ukuthi manje ke nandlaba tindlela tekuhlela so umuntu akayemtholampilo ufike phinza khona afundziswe nje ke ukuthi okay kuna nathi wena bofise yipi asho sabe ngifise nayi akhona bese yayiqala ke leyo ke kumakalo tethwele nakaya nje clinic kwekuqala nathi sabathi pregnant ufika afundziswe nginakelela ngeke kutethwala nje ke nginakelela umntwana phinza afundziswe nangekuhlela kanganga kube uyabuta nokuthi manje ke nasafundisiwe kuso nasobelekile ufise kuhlela ngani noma ke bohlela ngani ngapha inimbuto emibili usibohlela ngani ngaphambilini asho ke bese uyabuta ukuthi manje ke ufise kuhlela ngani phinzi asho sewa mina ngifise kuhlela nganako abeleke ke make wemntana asasabelekile 6 weeks after abelekile lapho vele siyesisi akahlele make wemntana ngoba bese tiba khona etingodi bese uthikhaza emva kwamalanga so tethwele phinze kanti usakhulisa nangelomunye umntwana usathi akunakelelwa kana naye so kukahle losimanje umntwana anakeleleke naye athole isikhathi sakhe sinakeleleka kahle atokhona kuthola yonke le care ayidingako kana satethwele make bese akasakhona lokuba ama challenges so siyesikhuthatha simanje ke emva kwa 6 weeks abelekile make nakayo goma umntwana naye afike ahlele lapho kulabanye ke kuyendeka ukhanza ukuthi athi ke kulo 6 weeks nasanabe ikhansa okuqedzile cause kuba nama discharges la khona nakaqeza kubele ukhanza ukuthi asimanje mina sengifuna yohlela angafiki lo 6 weeks still nalapho uyemokeleka ukuthi utohlela ngalokho sivikela ini na sibalekela ukuthi manje ke utethwale kanti usakhulisa nalomunye umntwana.
Yeah. So ngifuna kuva nje indaba ukuthi ingabe kuba khona ini ama opportunities leni banawo ezibabelekisi ukuthi mhlambe nececeshwa kabanti ngiyabekisa nje ama technologies lamasha kulolu hlangothi lwendo kubelekisa lokuthi vele bangedelelwathi nje litiko letempilo likhona ukuthi ninibikisa mhlambe ku training kungedalelwa lwati ngato tindzaba nje leseti sematheni ngato tindzaba tekubelekisa.
Okay kufundzisa akumi uyafundza esikoleni uqeza ugraduate but nalamsebentini futhi kuba nalama trainings nama workshops ngibekisa nje nyalo nje ke itolo besathi ukuthi scan sento abodokotela but nyalo kulama ama clinics ethu lana lasanaso le scan sesentana ngilabo nurse laba babelekisi so asingafika make eclinic yatokala siso aphinda amente scan kwena lo nurse lo ngumbelekisi awukho khona kushesha abone ukuthi okay tikhona inkinga litikhona letaba khona so vele lokuqeqeshwa vele kuyaqhubeka akumi nalo lwati noma ke le scope siyakhuliswa lesala babelekiso kuze stokugwema nathi timo leti bese tiyasihlasela ngale ngesheya ngiloko nje si lokuqeqeshwa vele akumi kuyaqhubeka njalo njalo nalokuthi uhulumende ukahle ngoba unema partners akhe lamsitako lamelelekelelako lokho nabe kunento ethite lokhona discoverekile bese kuyafundziswa futhi ukuthi oh okay lana kunana inkinga naye bese kuyafundziswa okay inkinga le kanjena uyaddressa kanjena ngidawubekisa nje ke ukuthi ukhanza nasababelekile labomake bese bopha kakhulu nase discover hayi man labantu labo phako lesithi iPPH postpartum hemorrhage ngathi sebayanza kubuke ukuthi yini letinkinga takhona bese phindze kuyafundziswa manje okay lokho nalokho ukumanage kanjena noma ke lokho nalokho ukwenta kanjena kuze ungamluzi lo make lo attend akho.
So ngifuna singene endzabeni ye breastfeeding ngoba nayo mina ngimisebenzi yenu kuneleni kwendako vele after make sekabelekile kuba naloko kumecwayisa nje into letiningi lovaya khatstone labo family planning nabo breastfeeding ingabe vele mhlambe niye bakhulumise nithini ngayo breastfeeding ngoba kuyimfo leni promoter vele ze Ministry of Health particularly kuloyo make loyo mhlambe lokhanze ukuthi HIV positive naloyo nje make lo HIV negative ngabe ni bakhutha nithini nibakhulumise nithini nge breastfeeding nakhona kumake loyo lokhanze ukuthi libisi aliphume bese kuba yini lenkinga kubangelwa yini lokho?
Okay ku breastfeeder noma kumunyisa ongumake kumqwa kakhulu sitawunakala ukuthi lo libisi lokuqala nakaqedza kubeleka make noma yes lo mqoka because lithwele le ndathi ngama antibodies lata khona kuvela umntwana umntwana nakabelekwa ude emasotsha akhe emtimba akasiko langanani so wathatha labeleni in lelo bisi lokuqala leli nalaba antibodies likudla lingemandi lingokonke nangana kahle nje ke liyayilitiye lona bese kuya ngehamba isikhathi seliyathamba ke so kuyendeka labanye ke bantu njengoba sisho uyafundzisa nekumunyisa afundziswe nekusitawunakela nje umntwana so labanye ke ukhanze ukuthi bantu athi manje ke cha mina ngifuni kumunyisa asikukhutsati lokho sikukhutsata simanje ke umntwana nakafika emhlabeni umunyise lokungenani 6 months so ungaqala ke ufake lokunye but nje 6 months wonke nje lona asihlanganisi lutho umunya kuphela lo mntwana loyo sikhutsata lokho bese ukhona nabo khanza nakaqesa kubeleka make athi manje athi libisi aliphumi kuyendeka ke libisi vele ukhanza ukuthi kulamana ngekuqala aliphumi ngathi njengoba ngisho litile leli ukhanza aliphumi kokuqala siyesithi manje ke cha qhubeka make umbeka lo mntwana kule ngono ayimunye libese seliyaphuma lo libisi and 2 sebese yakhutsata manje ke kufuna unathe emanti kakhulu mhlawumbe ke namahewu lokuthambile ukutaba ngemanti kuto increase la ivolume yemanti lamtimbeni wakho yekusiwakheke lo libisi libe ningi so libisi ke futhi ali the more umunya the more lakheka so kungawasikhaza vele akamunya umntwana lokungenani 6 months logqwele bese songaqala kumfake lokunye laba abantu nje baze bamunya bana nabo 2 years so lobamunya athi angadla kuphalisha yakhe abayeso yamunya so sikhutsata lokho umntwana akamunya then kunaba labanye ke ndawo senginemkhuba angadi lokuthi emaswati awuthathaphi lokuthi kusuke mine ngiyekukamakhelwane umphana umntwana wakho nalona lengqondo yethu asakulathatha lesikufundze ngale sesifundza ngala kamakhelwane ukuthi yena umphasikotela umphasiphi isikotela bese sesiyakopa labantwana labo liyabahlupha ke isikotela ke lo munye tamnika lesikotela abneta sona asheke umntana imphosa kufa lo munye amnika isikotela lemneta sona ashintshe umntana emehla abe yellow noma kunele simbangela kona isikotela so kungakho vele sikhuthatha manje ke umntana akangasithatha isikotela akamunye ngilapho ke la nabe nje vele lolubisi vele solo aluphume ngilapho safuna khona ubuye emtholampilo phinzi ngilapho lapho sihlala phansi nawe khona sibona vele sithale lubisi aliphumi noma ke kuna lenkinga silibisi kude ngilapho lapho sihlala khona phansi sesiyabonisana lokuthi ingiphi indlela lesingayisebenzisa because atifanani letindlela atifanani lelibisi efuna silisebenzisele esikotela and two nabe futhi mina ngesikotela futhi amine ngesikotela sodwana but kumqoka lesiwengqengala emtholampilo nabe ngingabekisa nje ubeleke namuhla utawumisa langa lonke ubone ibisi aliphuma ubone nakusasa ngasola liphuma elibisi vele ufuna bese emtholampilo lapho ungaze uhlale isikhathi usimanje hawu ngani base solibathi sakugcina liphumile nabe yabona maybe imalanga lamabili ayaphela sola liphuma ufuna bese uyawe emtholampilo ubone hayibo bese sola liphuma ngilapho utawuthola khona le advice lokuthi ingiphi indlela longayisebenzisa ukuze umntana anakeleleke awuze umntana akhule singayi kamakhelwane
kokugcina nje Gwebu namhlanje yacommemorate lelanga yini lento abeniyenza nje ezibabelekisi lamhla
namhla lelanga lelikhulu ku celebrate bona babelekisi litabelise Happy Valley nje ke nyale ekseni so lesabe sikwenda lapha siyake kufundziswe noma ke kukhulunywa ngalesiqubulo salonyaka kuphindwe kufundziswe ukukhumbutana ukuthi lokho nalokho sikwenda kanjena lokho eseba khona ke ukhansela ngesikhathi kibe sesiya demonstrators manje nasafundisana lokho nalokho kwenda kanje lokho nalokho kwenda kanjena so ngiloko sesikwende ke langa nje lesikhumbule ukuthi babelekisi bakhona phindze futhi bakhona nje ke baloseto kanganani ekwelekeleleni ilitiko letempilo ukuthi ku-improve i-health yabantu.
Yeah, all right. Sikakhulu Gwebu kuba nathi lo mhla ehlelweni ngisanele Gwebu loyo longunesi njengoba nje lamhla silitiko letempilo litabeli kubhala ilanga lebabelekisi International Midwives Day. Langa ke leli kuja mhla ka5 kepha ke litiko lekhona ukuthi lili kube lomuhla. Saselikefu nasibuya sidaba sazathi inzabada ke phandle.
Be sure to catch Business Watch every Wednesday between 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., where we feature the latest updates on business news, market trends, and exclusive interviews with industry leaders, as well as insights on emerging small and medium enterprises in the commercial sector. Business Watch, your business leader.
Ujala masada mahle kunati lesa.
Sabatandi ukuthi njengalokho sifile sive sitikhulume.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience in the kingdom.
Welcome back. It's 7 o'clock. These are international news. Ukraine has pulled back troops near several villages in the northeastern Kharkiv region, where Russian forces have been advancing and pounding settlements in a new offensive along the border.
Minutes after a Russian strike, this residential building in the Kharkiv city center was barely left standing. In the street below, experts were cautiously removing an S-300 missile, the only one that didn't explode.
These are guided aerial munitions that were launched from Russian territory. There are no military targets here. It's an ordinary residential area. They are just terrorizing the population.
Kharkiv's mayor said the city was hit by at least 5 bombs on Tuesday, marking one of the most destructive days since the start of Moscow's renewed offensive on the region. The assault, which began on May 10th, has opened a new front in the two-year conflict, forcing thousands of people to evacuate as Russian troops captured a string of villages in the area. The Ukrainian army said it had to pull back from 2 positions in the northeast on Tuesday, but troops were still trying to hold off Moscow's advance until the delivery of promised Western military aid, which was expected to take several more weeks.
The next 2 months will be the most difficult. After that, we will have a completely different situation on the battlefield.
Kharkiv's position near the Russian border has allowed Moscow to attack it from its own territory. And while it's massed up to 70,000 troops in the region, analysts say that won't be enough to capture a city the size of Kharkiv. They warn Russia could simply be trying to pile pressure on already depleted and overstretched Ukrainian forces.
France said it was imposing a state of emergency in the French Pacific territory of New Caledonia for at least 12 days, boosting police deployments and banning video app TikTok in a bid to quell deadly unrest that has left 4 people dead.
This video shows a chaotic scene unfold in New Caledonia. A gunshot sounds, and then a man is seen on the ground. In another video, a victim is covered with a blue cloth. New Caledonia has spiraled out of control. Here, this injured man is being carried away. Protesters aren't being shot by the police, but by other New Caledonians trying to protect their homes. They're now grouped together to defend themselves. The High Commissioner called for an end to the violence.
The demand for peace must be heard by everyone, both sides. We have entered into a dangerous spiral, a deadly spiral.
These residents of Nouméa have been pushed to the edge. After 24 hours of physical violence and the destruction of their property, they decided to barricade the suburb.
All we're trying to do is to protect our homes against people who set everything on fire, businesses too. They're in the midst of destroying the country, so we have to defend ourselves. At the moment, there's nothing dangerous here. We don't have any firearms.
Many living in anxiety, barricaded in their homes.
The suburb was burnt and looted. Demonstrators insulted us. It's been very difficult to live here since Monday. Like all Caledonians, we're shocked by what's happening. We're scared for our lives.
This police station was destroyed late on Wednesday. Residents go to petrol stations and pharmacies to stock up.
Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico was battling life-threatening wounds on Wednesday after officials said he was shot multiple times in an assassination attempt condemned by European leaders. The Danik and Daily said its reporter in the central town of Handlova heard several shots fired and then saw security guards rushing out to lift the premier off the ground and into a car.
This footage was taken just seconds after several shots rang out, hitting Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico in the abdomen. You can see his security detail picking him up and carrying him frantically to his car before the car speeds off to transport the 59-year-old leader to the hospital. Onlookers stood by in shock. Minutes later, footage showed a suspect on the ground apprehended by police. The shooting took place outside the Culture House in the city of Handlova, some 150 kilometers northeast of the capital, where the leader was meeting with supporters.
We went to shake hands with Mr. Fico. I was taking pictures of him when he was walking out of the building. We were waiting for a long time and we were excited. We wanted to shake his hand, and there was a man next to me. And at this moment, we had a loud noise. We thought it was a joke, that someone had thrown a firecracker on the ground. That was my first reaction.
How many shots did you hear?
I heard 3 quick shots, one after another, like when you throw a firework.
Did you see any injuries?
Yes, I saw a scratch on his head. And then he fell next to the barrier. I think it's a nightmare. I tell you, I don't think I'll wake up from this. This is not possible to happen in Slovakia.
The shooting comes 3 weeks ahead of crucial European Parliament elections, in which populist and hard-right parties appear poised to make gains. Fico is a third-time premier, and his leftist Direction Party won Slovakia's parliamentary elections back in September, staging a political comeback after campaigning on a pro-Russian and anti-American message. Critics have worried Slovakia under Fico would abandon the country's pro-Western course and follow the direction of Hungary under populist Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Thousands have repeatedly rallied in the capital and across Slovakia to protest Fico's policies.
Israel needs a clear and concrete plan for the future of Gaza, where it faces the potential for a power vacuum that could become filled by chaos. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Wednesday.
In this hospital in Gaza, the wait is interminable, and there are so few places to go for treatment. This little boy was blinded by shelling. The care he needs is not possible here. Doctors say he needs to go abroad by crossing the Rafah border into Egypt.
He has the right to treatment. He has the right for medical care. We hope that you will be able to open the Rafah border crossing for the humanitarian cases so that they can receive treatment and be provided with medication so the boy can once again see with his eyes.
Prior to Israel taking control of the Rafah crossing towards Egypt on May 7th, it was a vital route for desperately needed humanitarian aid into Gaza. Now empty trucks wait on the Palestinian side, while aid piles up on the Egyptian side. Israel has blamed Egypt for the closure, but Cairo in turn said this was a desperate attempt to shift blame. Human rights groups say the blockade has aggravated an already horrific situation, where famine and death have become the status quo, and basic needs such as water, sanitation, and medicine are being withheld.
We are in a almost mission impossible situation as humanitarian organizations to do our work today. And we remind constantly the parties of their legal obligations. What we need to see now is, of course, crossings reopening and massive humanitarian assistance getting in.
The EU's chief diplomat called on Israel to refrain from further exacerbating the already dire humanitarian situation and to reopen the crossing in Rafah so that at least some aid can begin trickling in again.
Hundreds of prison guards took part in a dead prison day across France on Wednesday, warning of the dangerousness of their profession following the fatal attack on a van carrying an escaped prisoner in Normandy on Tuesday.
With flares and bonfires, prison guards across France stood for a moment of silence to pay tribute to their murdered and injured colleagues and to demand reforms to France's overcrowded penitentiary system. The anger and sadness come after a violent ambush on Tuesday at the Ancarville toll booth in northern France. 2 guards were shot dead at point-blank range. 3 others were injured by masked individuals who attacked a prison transport vehicle and managed to free its prisoner. For guards across France, the dangers that they face must be taken into account.
We're realizing that things are escalating. There's violence around us. So it leads us to ask what the future looks like for guards in regard to the risks involved.
Such violent attacks are rare in France. The last similar ambush dates back to over 30 years ago, to 1992. But France's penitentiary system is in crisis. With over 77,000 prisoners, France's jails are overcrowded. This year, a report found that they hit record high capacity. Some jails have 250% more prisoners than they're supposed to. Hundreds of French police and gendarmes continue to search for clues as to who was behind the attack and where they and the escaped prisoner Mohamed Amra are hiding. The 30-year-old was being transported after a hearing. Known by his nickname La Mouche, or the Fly, he has over 13 convictions on his rap sheet. The government has vowed to track him down, as well as the other perpetrators.
A Senate Commission of Inquiry depicts France as overwhelmed by drug trafficking and issues new recommendations after a 6-month-long probe.
A 6-month investigation, after which the Commission alerts that illegal drugs have flooded French society. Cannabis use is constantly on the rise, while cocaine is now soaring, and legal highs could be next. With an increasing number of different drugs available on the market, authorities are often unable to keep up with their flow via the many transit routes used by gangs in the country.
Not one department, be it customs, police, intelligence officers, or any other service, has confirmed that the means they have today are sufficient to keep up the fight against drugs.
A lack of staff and appropriate technology, as well as loopholes in the country's judicial system, mean that the drugs trade in France generates between 3 and 6 billion euros every year.
These weaknesses show that trafficking isn't taken into consideration as much as it should be. If we'd measured the risk properly, we'd have much better means in France today.
As a result, the Commission recommends that France creates an anti-drugs prosecutor's office, as well as a new agency based on the DEA, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. It's also highlighted corruption in the country and called for better international cooperation. This in an effort to reach the drug lords, who most of the time seek refuge abroad, far from the trafficking that takes place in France.
Huge throngs of protesters blocked streets in the capital of Georgia and milled angrily outside the parliament building after lawmakers on Tuesday approved a foreign influence bill that critics call a Russian-style threat to free speech and the country's aspirations to join the European Union.
It triggered some of the largest protests in the country's history. Yet Georgia's prime minister said the foreign influence law, which was passed by parliament on Tuesday, reflected the will of the majority and therefore of the people.
When the opposition convinces its supporters of something and they go out in the streets to protest, it's an absolutely normal and healthy event. But the political minority cannot under any circumstance force the majority to accept or reject a decision.
Earlier in the day, scuffles broke out in Parliament between ruling party and opposition MPs as the law was approved in its third reading. The announcement was met with outrage by a crowd gathered outside the building, yet many vowed to keep up their protest movement.
They say that it's democracy, and this is like nothing like democracy. They're hitting people, they're being violent, I don't know, I'm so angry, I don't even can explain. We're gonna be here every day, all day, like, I won't give up.
Critics say the law, which requires media and advocacy groups receiving over 20% of their funding from abroad to register as pursuing the interests of a foreign power, can easily be abused to silence dissent and fear it will see Georgia drift closer to Russia. Both Brussels and Washington have repeatedly warned it could derail the country's EU membership bid and affect relations with the West.
This weekend, we saw some of the largest protests in Georgia's history, with tens of thousands of peaceful protesters. If this legislation passes, it will compel us to fundamentally reassess our relationship with Georgia.
A small if. Georgia's president said she would refuse to sign off on the bill, but her veto can easily be overridden by another vote in parliament.
Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Beijing early on Thursday for talks with Xi Jinping that the Kremlin hopes will deepen a strategic partnership between the two most powerful geopolitical rivals of the United States.
For his first trip abroad since his March re-election, Vladimir Putin was given a red carpet welcome in Beijing. The Russian president is set to discuss trade, diplomacy, and the war in Ukraine with his Chinese counterpart at a time where Russia finds itself increasingly isolated on the world stage. Shunned by the West over its invasion of Ukraine, Moscow increasingly relies on Beijing as its key economic partner. Last year, trade between the two nations reached $240 billion. Crucial to Russia has been importing dual-use goods from China, which the U.S. says has helped it continue to produce weapons, despite a slew of international sanctions. China, meanwhile, heavily relies on Russian imports for food and energy. Putin's visit will also allow the two leaders to present a united front in the face of mounting U.S. pressure. The Biden administration recently ramped up sanctions and restrictions against foreign banks and companies that help fund Russia's war machine, threatening to cut them off the global financial system. The move has seen Chinese exports to Russia dip significantly in the past 2 months, while Chinese banks have slowed transactions with Russian clients. But analysts say Xi and Putin are unlikely to simply turn the other cheek and could be looking for ways to quietly circumvent the sanctions.
Chinese President Xi Jinping departed Hungary on Friday after a 5-day trip to Europe. He pledged to work with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in a new multipolar world order.
Chinese President Xi Jinping departed Hungary Friday, having signed 18 bilateral agreements to increase economic and cultural ties. The two countries announced what they termed a new era, all-weather, comprehensive strategic partnership.
深化经贸 To deepen cooperation in the fields of economy and trade, investment and finance. 推进
Chinese investment in Hungary amounts to over $17 billion, according to Budapest, including electric car and battery plants. The European Union accuses China of unfairly subsidizing the industry, which Beijing denies. But this visit was about more than money. China and Hungary sent a geopolitical message.
We used to live in a one-center world order. Now we live in a multipolar world, and one of the pillars of this new world order is China.
Xi and Orban discussed Russia's war on Ukraine. The West accuses China of aiding Moscow's invasion through economic support and the sale of dual-use goods that can be used in weapons. Orban also maintains close political and economic ties with Russia.
Our voice in Europe is a lonely one. Europe today supports war. The only exception is Hungary, urging an immediate ceasefire and peace talks.
Hungary's traditional allies in the European Union and NATO have voiced anger at its close ties with China and Russia, but it won't bother Budapest, says analyst András Hete.
In fact, it might be even a point of which our government will be proud, because by now there is a very strong alienation between the Hungarian government and its Western partners, to the point where the present Hungarian government does not want to achieve, does not deem important to have a good reputation in the West.
There were small demonstrations against the Chinese president's visit. Teams of what the Chinese embassy in Budapest called volunteers confiscated protesters' flags. Prior to visiting Hungary, Xi visited Serbia, another European ally with close ties to Moscow and, like Hungary, a partner of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. That followed a 2-day trip to France, where Xi praised President Emmanuel Macron's call to reduce Europe's dependence on the United States. China is seeking to exploit divisions in the West, says analyst Steve Sang.
And that is, of course, reflected in the choice of all three countries that Xi Jinping would visit. So the more that China can charm Europe and persuade Europeans not to work with the Americans, the better.
Xi's visit to Europe was a carefully choreographed trip, but it will have done little to assuage fears in the West over China's long-term economic and geopolitical goals.
Palestinians across the Middle East on Wednesday are marking the anniversary of their mass expulsion from what is now Israel, with protests and other events across the region at a time of mounting concern over the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza.
On the 76th anniversary of what Palestinians call the Nakba, Israeli Arabs demonstrate in villages depopulated during the Arab-Israeli War of 1948. Residents of these villages in northern Israel fled their homes when fighting broke out and were later prevented from returning by Israeli troops. The current conflict in Gaza was also on their minds.
I'm here to show solidarity and support to my Palestinian brothers and sisters in their fight for the right to return to their stolen land. We're here to protest against this ongoing Nakba that began in 1948 and still continued till today.
Palestinians were displaced within the new state of Israel, and 700,000 fled beyond its borders, like this man who still lives in the West Bank refugee camp where he arrived as a child.
We left the village of Sabarin on May 12, 1948, and we came to the Jenin area because our village was close to Jenin. They transferred us to the Nur Shams refugee camp, where we lived in tents for 6 years. After that, they built small houses for us that could accommodate 2 or 4 people, and we continued to live in the Nur Shams camp until today.
People in Gaza also marked Nakba Day. More than 1.5 million have been displaced in the 7 months of war, and some see life in the coastal enclave as history repeating itself.
We lived through the Nakba not just once, we were displaced several times. Palestinian exile, we lived through it not just once but several times. In 2014 we were displaced, in 2008 we were displaced, in 2022 we were displaced. I was a child in 1967 as well, and the circumstances were very difficult.
Palestinians have long called for the right to return to the homes they lived in before 1948. For people in Gaza, just returning to their current homes is still a long way off.
Niger accuses its neighbor of harboring a French military base on its territory and at the same time accuses France of training jihadists to destabilize Niger. In response, President Patrice Talon threatens to block the export of Nigerian oil from his shores.
After expelling French troops from the country last year, Niamey now says it's concerned about their alleged presence in neighboring Benin. A recurring accusation that the French armed forces already addressed during a visit to Benin last December.
No, there is no permanent French military mission in Benin. You all live in Benin. If there was a French military base, you'd see it.
Since 2022, the Beninese government has stepped up its military presence in border areas in a bid to contain the threat of terrorism on Benin's doorstep and throughout the country.
As part of our strategy, we have planned and implemented the construction of a number of small military camps, which is perhaps what the Nigerian authorities are talking about. Perhaps they are of such high quality that Niger thinks African countries are not capable of building such high-standard infrastructure.
In response, Patrice Talon, president of Benin, has halted the export of Nigerian crude oil from the Gulf of Guinea. Niger is a landlocked country and therefore charters its petrol through a 2,000-kilometer pipeline inaugurated in January before exporting it internationally. Niger is now calling on China, the project's largest shareholder, to mediate the crisis.
Niger has always honoured its commitments and will continue to do so. That's why we told the Chinese side to take over and talk. And I think a solution will be found.
The project as a whole could now be threatened. It was expected to generate 300 billion CFA francs for Benin over 20 years and create 3,000 jobs between the two countries.
With the number of deaths nearing 240 and about 235,000 people displaced, Kenyans are mourning their lost ones and trying to rebuild after weeks of heavy rains that resulted in deadly floods and landslides.
At Mathare North Primary School, Beatrice Achieng has been preparing food the past 2 weeks for the hundreds of flood victims who are being sheltered in this internally displaced people campsite. She's with Tushinde Children's Trust, a charity working in Nairobi's Mathare and Kiambu informal settlements.
They are living here almost 300 people, and I'm only able to feed 200. There's a county government organization bringing food called Dish in a County. They are also helping us.
Monica Musyoka came here after losing her home in the recent floods. Her 4 children are not able to go to classes.
We hope government to help us with the books to build classes so that our children may return to school to continue learning.
This week, Kenya President William Ruto, who visited the Mathare area, said $7.6 million will be used to rebuild all the schools affected by the floods before reopening them. Also, his administration plans to compensate the victims for 3 months.
Households 1040 hapa Nairobi.
All the 40,000 households that have been displaced by floods in Nairobi, the government will give them 10,000 shillings so they can settle somewhere as they wait for the government to sort them out.
Back at the camp, another victim, Felix Ochang, told us it was around 10 p.m. when the water started flowing into his home 2 weeks ago. He says that while this place is not ideal, he has nowhere else to go.
We can't go back because our house is marked for demolition 30 meters from the river. Everything will be demolished.
In the Mathare area, some homes that have been built along the river are already being brought down. Director of Meteorological Services David Gikungu says the events of the past weeks have surpassed anything that resulted from last year's floods caused by the El Niño weather phenomenon, which he notes continues to influence heavily what's happening now. Because of that, he says, it's difficult to predict when the rains will subside.
We have referred to April as the peak because that is what is normal. March, April, May, and April normally has the heaviest rainfall. We want to see whether under the features of this influence, whether even in this season, 2024, it will still be the peak or whether it's going to go down.
Meanwhile, Peter Murger, Kenya Red Cross Disaster Risk Reduction Manager, says what's happening in neighboring countries also directly affects Kenya.
Yesterday we were having an issue whereby in the western side of Kenya, actual North Rift region, West Pokot, one of the markets was disrupted because of flooding in Uganda. Up north in the upper eastern region, when there is heavy rains in Ethiopia, it's flooding in Kenya, you know? And likewise on the Somali borders and Tanzania.
He also says more people may be displaced if more dams overflow.
Places like Tana River, they are still predisposed to issues, to emergencies. Places like the low-lying areas of the West Kenya, the Homa Bay, you know, the countries that are around the lake region, the backflow of Lake Victoria, which is really now very full.
28 minutes after 7, Stipetsa Lapo. Let's go for an ad break, Sabuya, and we'll continue the show.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sende ukukhicita lokhu sembili.
Renewal of TV licenses for 2024 is now open. Here is a quick reminder. A viewer's TV license costs 180 emalangeni per device. Other accessories such as decoders and set-top box cost 50 emalangeni per device. For traders and repairers, TV license costs 300 emalangeni per business area. And now, to pay your TV license, use these following methods. You can use MTN Mobile Money with the number 76222000 or dial *007 *3 *7#. Or you can use Eswatini Imali. And you can pay our TV license at any post office in the country. Another option is you can use any Nedbank branch using our TV license account number 1199004337. Don't forget, when paying for your viewer's TV license, reference with your PIN at all times. And when paying for a retailer TV license, reference with your TIN at all times. For more information, call us on 7802-4543 or 34050163 or 34020879. And you can send us a WhatsApp message on 762222000.
Right, now welcome back. Let's discuss now the significance of Europe Day 2024. It marks 74 years of unity, peace, as well as prosperity in Europe. Now, in this segment, our conversation will focus on the EU's extensive work in Eswatini, highlighting impactful projects as well as initiatives over the past 5 decades. We'll explore how the European Union has supported Eswatini in crucial areas, as well as delve into some of the key goals of the EU's multi-annual indicative program, particularly in youth and skills development. Additionally, my guest, with whom I have the honor of hosting again today, Her Excellency Desislava Shumelova, the EU Ambassador to Eswatini, will provide insights into the EU's involvement in the renewable energy space and agriculture project. Let's get into it. Desi, a very good morning to you. Kusile, welcome to the program. Quite a lot of, programs that the EU is supporting Eswatini with. And, I've been seeing how busy you have been, but our conversation today, I'm particularly excited to talk about it because some of these things are happening in the backdrop. Yesterday, there was the energy indaba happening in the country. The Minister for Agriculture was just in Nairobi, Kenya, trying to improve our agriculture space. And these are some of the projects that you really have a hand in. Let's talk about it. Maybe let's talk about how you've been quite the partner for Eswatini for 50 years now, I believe, 50 plus years. How excited are you about, reaching such a milestone and the EU Day?
Kusile, good morning, and thank you for having me. Indeed, 9th of May is Europe Day, and at the European Union, which is political, economic, and security and defense union, we celebrate 74 years of the Schuman Declaration. Schuman Declaration is a milestone document by the then French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman, who, as a prominent European thinker, thought of appropriate way to prevent conflicts from happening on the European continent. You remember that both world wars started in Europe.
Right.
And as a big European intellectual with other like-minded people, he came up with this blueprint for peace, the Schuman Declaration. And he not only thought of bringing together people that were enemies after destruction and devastation caused by the Second World War, he thought of a plan to make war impossible on our continent. How? By integrating our economies, by making sure that there is much more that brings us together than separates us. So this process of gradual integration in Europe, and we started with 6 countries, the founding members, and now we are 27 countries because after the fall of the Iron Curtain in the 90s, a lot of countries formerly part of the Soviet bloc and the socialist bloc adopted and embraced our values, which are peace, solidarity, democracy, human rights, respect for the rule of law, and of course, equality. So Europe has been built gradually by bringing together different nations. We are 27 countries, 24 languages. We use 3 different alphabets. And yet, while we cherish our diversity, we are united by our values.
Right.
And this is where we stand strong, even at a time where Europe has 2 wars at our doorstep. The unprovoked, unjustified Russian war of aggression in Ukraine, and we stand firmly with Ukraine, which is a candidate member state of the European Union. We support them, we defend their right to exist, their country, their homes. And we are also supporting a peaceful resolution in the conflict in the Middle East, where absolutely unacceptable loss of life is happening even right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite gut-wrenching what is happening there, Desi. But it's also just, you know, comforting to learn that the EU is standing firmly with, you know, who we should be standing firmly with, Ukraine, and just, you know, the resolution that you want to have. I want us to come back to Eswatini. Eswatini is really excited about, you know, having the EU here, and this has been a relationship that has spanned over decades and decades, over 5 decades now. Really, really impactful projects that you have assisted the country with, and you continue to do so, as we have seen recently on media outlets, how busy you have been in continuing that kind of support. But a few that I'm super interested in, some of the projects you've already done. One is electrification, which is quite necessary in Eswatini. There's clean water. We know that you have a hand there as well as education and youth development. Maybe let's talk about the support that, you know, you bring to Eswatini in these programs.
Indeed, the European Union, we take pride, and we are very privileged to be a strong, steadfast partner, as His Majesty representative told us last night, to the country's development over more than 5 decades. Yep. And as you rightly pointed, we have been investing in infrastructure, water, access to electricity, development of rural areas, introduction of free primary education, and improving competence-based curriculum at school, big investment in the agriculture sector, lately mostly focused on climate-smart agriculture, sustainable agriculture, diversifying the produce, but also renewables. We are working strongly with both the government and the private sector to create the right framework and conditions to have a steady pipeline of renewable energy projects, because the country has fantastic conditions to introduce more and more renewables, biomass, solar, wind, maybe thermal. So we are there with expertise and also with a lot of support, working closely with the electricity company, the regulator, and the private sector. As you mentioned yesterday, there was an energy in Dabo with a big focus on renewables. And having invested heavily in infrastructure, capital investments, we are now looking at something equally important, if not more important, which is development of human capital.
Right.
We live in a world with unprecedented challenges to humanity. We have to face climate change, increasingly devastating, unpredictable weather patterns. We have the big issue of biodiversity loss. We need to protect the environment, and Eswatini is really rich in biodiversity. Your natural capital is something very important. We have deepening inequalities around the world, and we also have market backlash on human rights in the last years. And here I want to use Europe Day to say something important. There is this false narrative that the promotion and protection of human rights is something linked to Western values, which is really wrong. All the countries that are members of the United Nations have accepted the United Nations Charter, where we have the protection and promotion of human rights. And the core idea behind this is everybody has the same rights. Human dignity, human rights are something that is the foundation of progress. Without respect for human rights, there is no sustainability because there is no peace and there is no stability. So any development is contingent on respect for human rights, which are universal and indivisible, be it social, economic, political. And this is very important. We should never forget this. And this is where also the EU has been a strong partner of the country, supporting civil society as a very important component of any functioning democratic society, and working with different organizations to protect and promote human rights, with a specific focus of late on the rights of women and children, and fighting the scourge of gender-based violence in the country, but also looking at differently able people's rights and not leaving behind people with disability or people who are, for different reasons, in a vulnerable situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting what you mentioned there. I want us to go back to a point you touched on, which is agriculture. And, you know, of course, the interrelation with climate change there. We know that you have support programs in, you know, confronting climate change in Eswatini. As media this year, even on World Press Freedom Day, the theme was particularly a press for the planet, and it has been made incumbent upon us to really commentate and emphasize issues around climate change. And maybe we can use this space and this opportunity to highlight the programs that EU is bringing forward to, you know, confront the situations around climate change in Eswatini. And I think it's going to help a lot of our viewers to understand, you know, how you help Eswatini.
Thank you. Indeed, we can see climate change effects everywhere. And while African countries have not contributed much to the causes for climate change, you are suffering in Africa disproportionately from the effects of climate change. And this is where, as good partners, the European Union, our member states come with strong support for helping finance the response, helping support with expertise, and through the Global Green Fund, developing countries to fulfill their commitments under the Paris Agreement, which is the big framework where all countries made commitments to work on mitigation, on adaptation, and it is very much linked also to the other big problem that we are facing, which is environmental degradation. And of course, we have helped the country with climate-smart agriculture, with new practices, introducing climate-resilient crops, making sure that we have water-resistant crops, making sure that farmers can diversify. We have a big irrigation project with small irrigation schemes to help farmers have a sustainable access to water and use water and manage water in a manner that ensures the best possible outcome. But the issue of a peaceful and a new model of existence between man and nature is an existential issue for us. We will not outlive the last bee and the last invertebrate. We are causing a huge extinction of different parts of our ecosystems, the same ecosystems that make our existence possible. We need clean water, we need clean air, we need a good environment. And this is where Eswatini is working together with the European Union, and this is where I'm very happy to see Eswatini banning single plastic, Eswatini looking at recycling, and I must say the private sector is leading in what we call the circular economy, recycling, reusing, making sure that there is much less waste, and repurposing and making things live longer, thus limiting the damage that our waste does on the environment.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. One of my friends has since been sensitized about, you know, the importance of what you have just alluded to. And his favorite phrase now is, I have to reduce my carbon footprint every day. Everything that we do, he finds a way to, you know, remind us that let's reduce our carbon footprint. And I think that's important. I want us to talk about the multi-annual indicative program. I know that you are personally really passionate about, you know, youth and skills development. And let's talk about the key goals of the multi-annual indicative programs, especially in youth and skills development.
Thank you. As you just said, youth is always wiser because young people see the world in a different way. They also have fresh ideas and they're also drivers for innovation. And we are really focusing on supporting the youth in Eswatini to acquire the right skills, the skills for the 21st century, to make sure that they either find jobs or can launch their own businesses, because there are many solutions that both attack global challenges, and we have seen youth organizations active in the areas of climate change, in the areas of recycling, in the areas of green energy. And we will focus on supporting the government, the technical and vocational skills institutions of the country to reskill and upskill youth, not forgetting the very important issue of mental health, not forgetting the absolute imperative to be inclusive, so everybody gets a chance to be trained and to get the required skills for the markets today, because there has been a big mismatch between what the private sector needs in terms of skills and what the educational institutions produce. So very close relationship and work with the relevant government ministries, with the colleges. We're fitting, of course, the relevant policy instruments. We are working closely with the government, with the parastatals, and with civil society and the private sector, guided by the National Development Plan of the country. And we are going to focus on the agricultural sector, agri-processing, creative industries, of course, green, renewables, energy sector, tourism, very important sector in Eswatini, and ICT, digital skills, because of course we live in a digital world with new challenges that this world gives us.
Yeah, before we get into future cooperation and goals, I really want us to talk about that, but we saw you yesterday busy with an exciting project. You know, the issue of book reading in Eswatini is something that needs to be emphasized every day and every day. Talk to me about that project.
Indeed, it was a pure joy yesterday to launch European Corner at the National Library of Eswatini. I'm truly grateful with my team that the library hosted us, also to celebrate Europe's Day by bringing some European books. We have now books from 7 out of our 27 member states. So this collection will only grow. It's a new beginning. Let me invite O.M. Eswati to come and have a look at the books. We have brought children's books, young adults and adult books, also some reference books and information about the European Union and our member states. And it is very important to cultivate reading culture, because we live in the 21st century and digital challenges are upon us. We have also artificial intelligence. We have a lot around digital literacy. This is absolutely something that everybody needs to work on. But reading books and the culture of reading is a completely different set of skills, not less important in our world. And I was also extremely privileged and honored to help launch a local book by a local author, somebody known by courtesy, Mr. Sibanze, who is a performing artist, musician, and MC. So yesterday it was our pleasure and honor to launch his book, which is called 10 Principles of Artistic Mastery, and where he shares basically what you need as a creative, as an artist, to bring your talent to the fore and make your talent a profession. It is, I think, a big celebration when we have a local book that would guide generations of creatives towards artistic success, mastery, and put creativity into the market. Because at the end of the day, creative industries are also a big driver for jobs and economic development.
Yeah. And we've seen your involvement there as well with, you know, art pieces and, you know, always encouraging people in the art space to really reach out and, you know, go on for their dreams. I want us to talk about this Samoa agreement, you know, looking into maybe future cooperation and goals. What does, you know, what are the main objectives for the EU's partnership with Eswatini over the next 20 years, particularly with the new Samoa agreement in place now?
Indeed. Just to finish with the creative industries, of course, let me say that for the team of the EU delegation to Eswatini, one of our biggest moments in the year, of course, is the EU Bushfire Schools Festival, which happens on the Thursday before the big festival, which is a wonderful and strong collaboration and partnership with the House of Fire, with the Bushfire, and we bring children from all over the countries, rural areas. This year we're going to bring children from very poor backgrounds, also children with handicaps, children from the refugee camp in Paka, to enjoy the miracle of art and to discover that art can be a vocation, can be a profession, to dream and to learn through art. So 30th of May, EU Bushfire Schools Festival at House of Fire.
On Thursday.
Everybody's welcome. And indeed, thank you for pointing at the new big overarching legal framework for the relationship between the 27 European Union member states and the 79 countries of the African, Caribbean and Pacific region. It is a big achievement. It is an agreement that replaced the former Cotonou Agreement, namely with the objective to put a big focus at facing together the challenges of the 21st century. The challenges of climate change, environmental degradation, ocean governance, migration, human capital development, but also protection and promotion of democracy, human rights, international cooperation, and peace and stability in the world. Very important things. Nothing is given without peace and stability. And of course, partnerships and talking to each other, dialogue, continued collaboration, together inventing and reinventing the way we face these global challenges is the only way forward. And this is where the Samoa Agreement is important. I must say that Eswatini should take big pride because it was the Kingdom of Eswatini that led the negotiations on the African protocol under the Samoa Agreement. So Eswatini took admirable leadership and successfully concluded these negotiations last year, and the country then signed the agreement on 14th of December last year.
It's quite interesting. You mentioned all the countries under the EU. You also speak of the importance of, you know, just for Eswatini to be a sovereign state in our bilateral and multilateral relations. And I think that allows us to have a conversation about the importance now of integrating Eswatini into regional and global value chains. How does the European Union plan to assist Eswatini, you know, in integrating into those value chains?
Of course, it is very important in a big, interdependent and gradually contested world to have regional integration and to work together. And the European Union supports our partners, including Eswatini, in many ways. At the global level, we work together with the United Nations to reform the United Nations system, to reform the global governance system in ways to be more adequate to the world today, including by giving a stronger voice to unrepresented regions, notably Africa. We were very vocal to welcome the African Union to the G20, and we see a space for Africa at the UN Security Council.
Yeah.
So this reform is ongoing. As you know, there is a summit for the future at the UN in September this year. And it is an African country and an European country, Namibia and Germany, who are leading the preparatory work for the summit for the future.
Yeah.
When it comes to regional integration, the European Union supports the regional economic communities such as SADC and COMESA actively. We support the structures of these regional integration families to work on many issues, from peace and stability to strengthening of sovereignty and democratic institutions, to promotion of human rights, social inclusion, and the regional value chain, so trade.
Yeah.
You know, the European Union, I mentioned, has grown through economic integration to trade, and we have also a very important trade agreement, the EU-SADC Economic Partnership Agreement, and a major objective of this agreement, of course, is stronger regional integration, supporting customs. You have one of the oldest customs union in the world, SACU, supporting SACU, supporting regional trade, removing barriers to trade, facilitating trade, and all this work, including on standards, including on ways to trade better, tariffs, is of course something that will serve the country, Eswatini, become very quickly and seamlessly part of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So everything we do to facilitate trade within the region with the European Union helps the country also become an important partner regionally and continentally.
I just like the fact that all the things that you're mentioning align perfectly with the Sustainable Development Goals. And as you mentioned, you know, globally you do work with the United Nations, as well as, you know, the Paris Agreement as well, even what is happening regionally. Everything that you mentioned, we really, really appreciate, Desi. Thank you so much for coming into the program today. Always a pleasure to have you providing the insights and the many, many projects and programs that you assist Eswatini and the rest of the globe with. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and happy Europe Day, celebrated in the beautiful kingdom of Eswatini.
Yeah, and there you have it. Desislava Shumilova, EU Ambassador to Eswatini, speaking on the significance of Europe Day 2024. It marks 74 years of unity, peace and prosperity in Europe. And we have discussed quite a lot in this segment, including the extensive work in Eswatini by the European Union, highlighting, of course, the impactful projects, the initiatives that they have brought over the past 5 decades. And, of course, we have explored the support that they have brought to Eswatini in crucial areas like assist in electrification, access to clean water, education, youth and skills development. You have mentioned what is going to be happening on the 30th of May, Emalken. So all of that we're excited about, and we do hope that as the years go by, we will continue to have these beautiful and amicable relations that we have with the EU, as well as all the other organizations that we have in Eswatini. We've come to the end of the program today. Thank you so much for staying with us. See you again tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye-bye.